everybody, welcome to my YouTube channel, Lessons with Guitarman. My name's Aaron and I'll be your designated driver here today for this great song, It Wasn't Me. It's a minor blues in the key of A minor and just has a really cool melody to it. You know, one of the first blues tunes that I learned early in my playing career. Just absolutely fascinated me on the guitar, amazed me what you could do with a pentatonic scale. One of the coolest tunes I've ever learned. Now this tune was written by a fellow named Patrick Lewandowdski. Now Pat was a guy that I used to go see back when I was in college at the great Bowling Green State University, where I graduated from. One town over there, about 20 minutes, 30 minutes away. Then downtown Toledo, Ohio, there was this little dive bar called Frankie's on Main Street. And the first time I went there were these two fellas playing guitar, Patrick Lewandowdski and Bobby May. And they called themselves Two Big Guitars. I believe they're still playing to this day. And let me just tell you, these guys are some of the best guitar players I've ever seen. Both of them talented, great singers. I'll leave a link in the description below to where you can actually hear this song because it's got great lyrics, and just listen to those guys playing solos. Absolutely fantastic. So let's go ahead and dive in there and see how this thing works. It's a minor blues, and the chords in there are A minor, C minor, B minor, E7, and then there's a D minor in there too, and an E minor. The chords are labeled there in the chart. You'll see them as they're going across on the screen. They're pretty straightforward. If you have any questions about that, just reach out to me and we'll certainly go over that. Today, I just want to take a quick look at the melody and might give you some ideas of what you can do with the A minor pentatonic scale. The first line is a pickup line, and it goes, which is just 5, 7, 5, okay? Pretty straightforward. Then the first note of the first measure is going to be a 5. Now, this is kind of a motif that he follows through a good bit of this song, where he goes, then he's going to come back here and grab 7, 8, 7. So the whole first measure together is going to sound like so. 1, 2, 3, 4. One more time. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now in the second measure, what we're going to have here is a 5 eighth notes, a quarter note, and an eighth note. 7, 5, 7, 5, 7, 5, 7. So 1, 2, 3, 4. One more time. 1, 2, 3, 4. So the first two measures together with the pickup line is going to sound like so. 1, 2, ready, go. Now moving on to the third measure, what we're going to do is repeat essentially what we did in measure 1 and measure 2, in measure 3 and measure 4, except at the end of measure 4 you're going to notice instead of there being a 5, 7 like there is in 2, there's a 5, 5. Alright, what I'll do now is play through the pickup line all the way through measure 4, and measure 1 is exactly the same as measure 3, and measure 2 is exactly the same as measure 4, except for the last two notes, the 5, 7 turn into a 5, 5. And that's going to sound like 1, 2, ready, go. So in measure 2, it's, and measure 4, it's. Now the fifth measure in this is going to be, so 7, 7, pull off 7, 5, 5. Okay, so 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now moving on to the sixth measure, what we're going to have here is you're going to see the 5 there in the little parenthesis in the little tie there, which basically goes from the dotted quarter note with the little parenthesis going to the sixth measure is a tie, and that means hold that note for the duration of another quarter note. So when we go into the sixth measure, we're still holding that 5. And then doing that pull off thing again there in the sixth measure where you got 7, 5, 7 again. And here, which is just an absolutely brilliant move, instead of coming back down to this 5, he drops down to the 2nd of A minor, giving it that really cool bluesy sound and hammering up into the 3rd, which sounds like... How neat is that? The first time he goes 5, 5, then 5, 4, up, or you could slide there too. I have a hammer on, but you could also slide there. Measure 5 and measure 6 are going to sound like so. One more time. 1, 2, 3, 4. Measure number 7 is going to sound like so. 1, 2, 3, 4. 7, 5, 7, 8, 7. And I should also point out that I should have pointed out before, you'll see those squiggly lines over the 5 and the 8. That means vibrato. Measure number 7, it's going to sound like 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so 1, 2, 3, 4. Measure number 8 is exactly the same as measure number 2, except for a 7 at the end there. We're going to use a number 5. Measure number 8 is going to sound like so. 7, 5, 7, 5, 7, 5. 7, 5, 7, 5, 7, 5. Okay, and on measure number 2 it was 7, 5, 7, 5, 7, 5, 7. Alright, so let's go ahead and play from measure 5 through measure 8 and see what those 4 measures together sound like. 1, 2, ready, go. Alright, now moving on to the 9th measure, we're going to be moving out of the 1st position A minor scale and moving up into position number 2, which would be this position here, and where he's pretty much going to be using just these notes. Alright. And what he does is slides from 7 to 9, and then puts vibrato on number 8, so 7, slide to 9, 8. Measure number 9 is going to sound like so. Now you'll see there that 8 in parentheses going into 10, which is a slide, and you just barely hit that 8 and going into that 10th measure there. This 10th measure and the 11th measure are the hardest part of this entire song. The way that I've figured it out on one of his recordings, going from measure number 9 to measure number 10, it's... Now what is that? So what we're doing here is sliding from the 9th measure going into the 10th measure, 8 to 10, then 8, 10, 8, 10, bend, back down. And then when you come to 10, right when you strike the note, you and do like a... This is kind of a blues effect where you bend the note immediately and come back right to the note. Probably heard this kind of playing before in like the great Jeff Beck, where it's called, they call this absolute string bending, where you actually bend right to the note. So from here to here, and instead of kind of going in between it, you go right to it like a pitch wheel. Like doing that, but in this case you're going in context. That's going to sound like so. 1, 2, 3, 4. Then you're going to hit a quick 8, 10, 8, 10, 8, 10, 8, 10. Coming out of the 9th measure, going into the 10th measure with that 8 slide there, it's going to be 1, 2, 3, 4. So measure 9 and measure 10 are going to sound like so. 1, 2, 3, 4. All right, now moving on to measure number 11, what you're going to have here is a series of triplet pull-offs. This part right here looks harder than it really is. What you got going on here is 8 pull-off to 5 to 8, then you hit 8 again, pull off to 5 to 8 again. All right, so what you got going on here is then you're going to hit that, stay on that note and hit it again. And then stay on that note and hit it again. Except in this case, we're going to slide from the flatted 5th down to the 4th. Right? So. And now we're going to do 2 more triplet series here. You're going to go 8, slide back to 7, 5, then 7, pull off 5, down to 7. You're doing the same thing in succession, you're just falling back 1 note. Alright, now that's a monster lick in itself. I highly recommend taking a little bit of time and learning how to do that the correct way, because this little lick right here is a really killer idea that you can use in your own playing over all kinds of different songs, where you're taking a motif and going. Alright, so going from the 9th measure through the 11th measure, it's going to sound like so. So 1, 2, 3, 4. Pretty dang cool, huh? When I first learned this song, I had no idea what he was playing right here. I just kind of played whatever I wanted because I couldn't figure out the notes. It wasn't until just recently when I went back and listened to this and thought, you know what? I'm going to put a lesson together about this and listen to it a few times, and I could actually kind of hear what he was doing there. It's very close to what he was doing. But he does change it a lot in his live playing. I've seen him do it about 50 different ways. That's a way that he has done it, and I've heard on some recordings. What a neat walk down, going down the pentatonic scale without just going. He just has that. It just has that eluding sound to it that I particularly like. Twice in this song, he's kind of used that falling down technique, I kind of call it, where you go. Works from a high note to a low note, you know, and in the beginning part of the melody he's like falling down, falling down. And then he falls down again. So he likes using that technique a lot, and I have to be honest with you, it rubbed off on me big time years ago, and I use this idea in my playing all the time in bluegrass, swing tunes, jazz tunes, you name it. Moving on to the 12th measure, or the first ending here, what we have is a 5, 7, slide to 9, 8, 5, 7, slide to 9, 8. The 12th measure is going to sound like so. 1, 2, ready, go. And then the second ending, what we're going to do, instead of the 5, 7, 9, we're going to go just. Something that I've noticed in the recordings that I've heard of him, he changes the endings constantly. I don't know if I've ever heard him play the same ending twice, so this is just a way that you can end this song that I heard on one of his recordings. He definitely does it many different ways, and that's something that great blues players do all the time, is change their endings and do little different things, and he does that all over this song. Now let's go ahead and play around this song one time in its entirety, slowly, so you can hear it in context, and that'll be a wrap on this tune. So from the beginning, slowly. 1, 2, ready, go. have the great It Wasn't Me by Patrick Lewandowski. Now, a few things about this song is the use of vibrato in this. I put in there. You'll see the lines. Try to implement in your playing. Now, obviously, on an acoustic guitar like this, I have set up for bluegrass with medium gauge strings. It's a little harder to do because I believe they played with electric strings on acoustic guitars, so getting vibrato for them was definitely a lot easier. I would listen to the recording a couple times if you can, so you can hear how the master does it. Alright, well that's a wrap on this video. I hope you enjoyed that as much as I did. Feel free to reach out to me if you have any questions. Don't forget to hit the like and subscribe button, and I'll be seeing you down the road.